Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here with us, and just by showing up, you are already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I am so thrilled to present one of my really good friends who's quite familiar with being recognized as wickedly smart throughout the whole music industry, and she's brought along one of her buddies whom I have admired from afar for quite some time. Before we get started, let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please feel free to introduce yourselves, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try our best to address as many of those as possible during the interview. Also, please make sure your chat is set to address speakers and attendees, not just speakers. I want to thank our sponsors for without their support, we couldn't do what we do. I want to thank First Horizon Bank, Bufkin Baker, Four Roses Bourbon, the Fairlane Hotel, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Lightning 100, Tennessee Brew Works, Moo TV, Jive Printing, Project Music, and Cushmaster's brand of CBD products. So let's get down to business. Today, I am pleased to be broadcasting my portion of the program from one of my favorite rooms in Nashville, Tennessee, called Tennessee Brew Works. They brew beers using only the natural ingredients that they source from local farms. Not only do they produce many of the finest beers you'll ever taste, but the food, oh my God, it's some of the best if you've ever been here, you know what I'm talking about. So please check it out. They've been very COVID friendly. They've got a patio outdoors that is heated, and I am indoors right now, and I am socially distanced away from all the other patrons. But please check out Tennessee Brew Works when you have an opportunity. Now let's get down to the program. In today's host seat, we welcome back my good friend, Vickie Nauman from LA. Vickie has deep experience in the intersection of music and technology, focusing her business on rights and licensing, products and experiences, and strategic business development. She founded the boutique consulting and advisory firm Cross Border Works and has a portfolio of forward-thinking companies from large enterprise to early stage startups. Her work spans music legislation, thought leadership, the entire stack of music technology, product management, music finance, partnerships, and being a subject matter expert, giving her a unique perspective on the ever-changing global landscape. As a digital music pioneer, Vickie worked on licensing and product for one of the first legal digital services, MusicNet, from Real Networks JV in 2001, and led strategic partnerships for connected device manufacturer Sonos, which is a leading wireless music system, started and ran the US business for global music platform 7 Digital, and did the digital business in Europe and China as a consultant. In addition, she built one of the first DMCA compliant services at tastemaking station KEXP in Seattle. Prior to 2001, she ran marketing programs and produced live broadcasts in traditional radio in the NPR network, and started her career at Procter & Gamble, which Vickie, you and I have that in common.
Yeah.
Vickie has broad network and experience in Europe, China, and US, and earned a 2006 MBA through the London School of Economics, NYU Stern, and HEC Paris. Her work includes serving on UCLA's Music Innovation Program Advisory Board and acting as an advisor to South by Southwest music panels. Her client list is available on her LinkedIn profile. And joining as Vickie's very special guest today is none other than Arabian Prince, a songwriter, rapper, producer, DJ, technologist, pro gamer, and futurist. Arabian is best known for being a founding member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted rap group NWA, West Coast electro music pioneer and producer of the Grammy-nominated #1 hit song, Supersonic. He's founder of Innovate, Next Open Labs, founder of GG Goat, streaming PC, partner at Covatech, and president at LAFTC, which is the Los Angeles First Tech Challenge robotics competition. His passion for technology led him to create 3D animation and special effects studio in the 1990s, working with companies like Saban Entertainment and Fox, including 100 plus video game titles, film and TV titles for Fox Interactive and Vivendi Universal. As a consultant, Arabian has advised many companies on bridging the gap between technology and youth while bringing new product innovations to market. He's currently working with his tech partners to bring open labs to communities across the country in support of youth, women, diversity, veterans, and anyone else who wants to explore the future of technology. Please welcome these two amazing guests to the smartest people in the room. Take it away, Vickie.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Arabian and I had we had a little pre-chat last night, and I felt like, yeah, we could go on for hours probably, really. But we first met through a mutual contact, Gigi Johnson, UCLA. And I remember she said to me, she said, wait, you don't know Arabian? Okay, you two have to meet. And so almost all the time when people have that kind of reaction, it ends up being golden. And so I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the last couple of years. And thanks so much for taking time to do this today.
It's going to be fun.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm going to break this into kind of a few different pieces. And I think a lot of people here probably know you from NWA background, but I want to go to the Wayback Machine and tell us a little bit about, you grew up in LA. Sounds like you had a kind of a musical household. What got you, tell me about your early years here and what got you excited about music and technology.
Yeah, so, I was born a poor Black child, just kidding. But, born and raised in Compton, and I'm old. So I was born in 1965, so I'm 55 years old now. But I remember my father telling me, saying I was born during the Watts riots, and we lived close to Watts at the time. And he would always tell me, I used to have to go out during the riots and get you milk, stuff like that. So you should appreciate me. And I remembered that. And so born in Compton, only child, had a mother who was very overprotective of me. And that's the key, I think, to my success, is she was not about to let me get caught up in all of the craziness of Compton at the time. And 90% of that craziness was actually caused by my family. My uncles and cousins were the guys causing most of the trouble in the neighborhoods. And she didn't want me to be like them because they were one of my biggest influences. That's who I idolized, my uncles and my cousins. So she kind of kept me out of the streets, kept me in the house, kept me in the books and those kind of things. And my uncles, being the crazy people that they were very overprotective of me as well. And they did the same. Like, we don't want to see you out here in the streets with us, because if you're out here in the streets with us, there's going to be problems. And I was more scared of them than anybody else in the streets. So, they kind of kept me in line. And make a long story short about my childhood, my father was a writer. He wrote over 100 books. He was the editor of a bunch of magazines and newspapers, the LA Watts Times, the Sentinel, Cashbox magazine, Urban Network magazine. He co-owned Players magazine, which was an adult magazine back in the day. And like I said, he wrote over 100 books. So that was kind of like my influence in how I got into writing, like being able to be a lyricist and things like that. My mother was a classical pianist and a music teacher. She also worked at Rockwell International and I think Boeing and all those aerospace companies in the back. So, I had some influence that kept me out of trouble.
And your mom put you in Catholic school too, right?
Yes, she threw me in Catholic school and was like, you're not going to public school. And what my mother didn't know, and I'm going to say this, is Catholic school was actually worse than public school, because what I realized is if you were in public school, the teachers and the faculty, they were kind of hip and knew what was going on. Catholic school didn't have a clue. We were getting in trouble. We were doing anything we wanted to do. in Catholic school because the priest and the nuns didn't know what was going on in the streets. So yeah, I guess she was trying to do her best.
So you grew up in Compton, and you had two parents that had kind of creative, very creative and musical backgrounds. How did you start? Did you discover that you liked music at an early age, or did you want to make music?
So it was kind of weird. I wanted to play football because I was playing Pop Warner football at the time growing up. I wanted to play football. I didn't care about anything else but football at the time. But my favorite uncle, Wayne, we call him Hoggy, he was a guy with the cool car. Like he had the Dodge Challenger. He had the van with the CB radio and all of that stuff. And I got to hang out with him. And he was part of my musical influence. He was listening to Prince, Parliament Funkadelic, The Last Poets, and he's the one that introduced me to Kraftwerk, which was a big influence on my life going forward. So that was part of my influence. My mother, since she was a music teacher, was always trying to get me to learn the piano. I hated the piano. I did not want to learn and just sit there and do that stuff, but it helped me later on as well. And then my crazy cousins and uncles all got sent away to the military. And that was like a pivotal change in my life, because when they came back from the military on break or leave, they would come home from overseas with all kind of electronics, ham radios, stereo systems. And one thing in particular was my cousin Kenneth came home with this synthesizer, and the synthesizer was called Art 2600. I think I got a picture of it. We got some cool stuff we're going to show you here. Check this out. Ah, yes, an Art 2600. There it is. So that's the first thing that I got to play with as a little kid. I'm like 7 years old and I'm playing with this thing that I can't get sounds out of. Like, you literally had to be a rocket scientist to make music with this thing. And I played with this, and these were my influences and really, really got me wanting to get into music because I couldn't get sounds out of this. So I stayed there every day working with that thing.
That's great. And yesterday you were also telling me how your dad had a show on radio, and that you would go and kind of look through the library, and you'd had access to all this music. And for people who are, who were born, 20 years ago, it's probably hard to really imagine that back in those days, we heard things on the radio, but not ever, there was no Spotify. There was no way to access millions and millions of songs. So tell people a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my father had a talk radio show on KACE Radio in LA. And on Sundays, he had his talk radio show. And I would go down to the station with him. And I would sit in the control booth opposite his, because his was just a room with a microphone and, some stuff. But the other control room was what they used during the regular week to play all the music. So I was in there with the carts and the turntables and the vinyl, and I would sit in there and play music and, go crazy. And I taught myself how to make mixtapes. And I'm maybe 12, 11 years old at the time. And I'm making these mixtapes and I'm taking them to school and I'm selling them for people's lunch money. I was like, hey, you want a mixtape? And they give me their lunch money to get a tape. So that was like my first kind of thing into becoming a DJ. I'm like, I'm pretty good at this, even though I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And so that led to kind of the next step where you were in DJs, and there were all these DJ clubs in LA.
Yeah. So one thing I learned, I was a very smart kid. I have a very high IQ. I don't talk about that. I actually hated the fact that I had a high IQ in school because, I was embarrassed because I was smarter, but I didn't want to be smarter. I wanted to be just regular or whatever. My mother kept pushing me and I could have skipped a grade and I didn't. But so what happened was my mother was very overprotective. She didn't let me go out. So when I was about 14 or 15, we started having the little elementary school dances and the junior high dances. And I wasn't really allowed to go because my mom was just stickler on me going out. And I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? If I'm the DJ, I'm the first one at the party, the last one to leave, and nobody will laugh if my mom brings me because, I got to bring my equipment. So I literally became a DJ so I could go out and party and make money at the same time. So I started doing that for the elementary school dances. And then I started traveling and doing other school dances. And then I got a chance to do a quinceañera in a city called Lenox, California, for a guy. He had this huge, he owned like the whole block. There was a community center, and then he owned a pet store. And it wasn't a traditional pet store. It was right in the middle of a Hispanic neighborhood. So he sold like 100-pound bags of chicken feed and 100-pound bags of pigeon feed and 50-pound bags of rabbit feed. And he sold rabbits and chickens and those kind of things. So I worked there during the week. And on the weekend, I would DJ at the community center. And we turned it into this place called The Cave. And it was a teen club that lasted for a couple years that was really popular in LA. A lot of the big DJs came through The Cave, and that's where they got their start.
That's great. That's great. And I love the, I love the idea that, the A leads to the B and the B leads to the C, and that you happen to do this DJ thing. And then you're figuring out how you can insert yourself into this world that your mother was probably, she was protecting you.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. And from that, it evolved. Like I became a really good DJ. I became kind of like this celebrity in the hood and the inner city and stuff like that, and started bringing some of my other big DJs through, like the Dr. Dre's and the Egyptian Lovers, who were all part of different crews. Like Dr. Dre and DJ Yella, who eventually went on to be in NWA, they were part of the World Class Wrecking Crew. Egyptian Lover was part of Uncle Jam's Army. And I was the kid who learned how to use all of the technology, the drum machines, the sequencers, the samplers, and all of those things. So I was hanging out with everybody, but I wasn't really part of a crew. And there was a pivotal shift in when we went from being DJs to starting to make records. And what happened was Uncle Jam's Army started bringing in rappers from the East Coast, Sugar Hill Gang, Curtis Blow. They were bringing them to LA. And us as DJs were like, wow, this is cool. We want to do that. And we started tinkering around with making records. And Uncle Jam's Army and Egyptian Lover bought a drum machine. They bought an 808 drum machine, which is the sound still to this day. And I would be at his house all the time playing with this drum machine. Well, I couldn't afford one. So I went to Toys R Us and I bought this thing called Sensonic drums, which was a toy that had 4 little kind of tom pads on it, and it made a bunch of sounds. And I would take that to the club and play that while I was DJing, and people would dance to just this toy drum machine.
So there are all these DJ clubs. So people are where are people spinning and where are people DJing? Are they doing house parties or warehouses or?
Yeah.
What?
So we started out small doing the schools. I remember going to Dorsey High School or Crenshaw High School. We would do like the lunch dances and the quad and things like that. And then it evolved. Like I said, you had Uncle Jam's Army, you had Z-Cars, you had the Wrecking Crew, you had Ultimate Sounds, all these crews starting to do bigger things. We would do like skating rinks, World on Wheels and Skateland USA in Compton. And then you got Uncle Jam's Army starting to do like the Celebrity Center, or they would do the Shrine Auditorium. Like, what? They're doing a dance at the Shrine? That was huge. And then they got so big, they started doing the Convention Center. And then ultimately 10,000 people at the LA Sports Arena, and only for DJs. Like there was no concert. It was 10,000 people at the sports arena. So it was pretty much EDM concerts before there was ever EDM.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of cut your teeth doing these DJ clubs, and then Sugar Hill Gang. I mean, I can't even imagine it being in the center of all of that, because there's so many formative sounds and bands in that era. So you're in LA, you get exposed to what's happening on the East Coast, and then the light bulb sparks that, hey, we could actually make music instead of just spinning and putting it together. We could go in the studio. So how did that happen?
Yeah, so remember I mentioned Egyptian Lover had this drum machine called an 808. That drum machine was the drum machine that was used for one of the biggest dance songs of all time by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, called Planet Rock. right? And I take that back. It was like this crazy thing. It's like Planet Rock. And it was an 808 drum machine, and it was the sample was by a German group called Kraftwerk, and that's the key. Kraftwerk was this obscure electronic German rap, I mean, not rap group, this German band that used synthesizers to do their music. And they did a song in 77, I believe, called Trans Europe Express. And if you listen to it now, it's a very slow song, you know, kind of nice, melodic with some sense. But the key was the melody of that was da na 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 da na 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 da na 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 na, which was the hook in Planet Rock. So they took that, put that in Planet Rock, and it changed the world of the club scene. So we all followed in line and started making party music like that on the West Coast.
Wow. Wow. And so, how did you end up in the studio and deciding to make a record? Did you have a producer? Were you on a label? Did you do it yourself?
So let me clarify something. I said Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5. It's not. It was actually African Mbata and Soul Sonic Force. So that's who did Planet Rock. Anyway, same. They're all kind of connected together. But how I started is, you know, hanging out with Egyptian Lover and Uncle Jam's Army and the Wrecking Crew. They all at the same time in unison were like, we're going to make records. And I'm like, cool. And I'm like, but I'm not really in either camp. I'm like working with everybody. I'm cool with everybody. I'm like, well, I want to make a record too. So I literally saved up $500. And the guy who owned the pet store, Sam, he gave me another $500. And I went into a recording studio. I had never been in a recording studio ever in my life. Didn't know what I was doing. I said, I got $1,000. I want to make a record. Me and the engineer sat in there. He said, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I want to make a song that sounds kind of like this. And we went and embarked on this thing. And together we created my first single, which was called Strange Life. And I'm going to be honest, it didn't come out sounding like I wanted it to sound, but it came out sounding like all of my influences. It was a mixture of like Prince, Parliament Funkadelic, Kraftwerk, and kind of like punk rock new wave, because that was hot back then. Like, if people don't know, in the 80s radio was different. There wasn't really a rap scene. There wasn't really this, you know, R&B thing. It was pop music was everything. It was Prince, it was Michael Jackson, it was the Barcades, Cameo, Parliament Funkadelic, but it was also Madonna. It was also, you know, Cyndi Lauper, ABC, the Depeche Mode. So that was our influence. And that's what my first song came out. And it actually hit the radio because it sounded like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And for everyone, I mean, like in the 80s, you know, we didn't have, that was when there were lots and lots of radio stations that were independently owned. And so everybody wanted to have their own sound. It wasn't like how we, you know, after the FCC removed the limitation and Entercom and Clear Channel could then program hundreds of stations from headquarters. These were about local scenes and local sounds. And, you know, I remember the first time I first heard Kraftwerk, and it was on a little indie radio station. I was just like, what is that? You know, I want more of that. And we really did, you know, that was our only cultural access point.
Yeah. So, and really quick, I was going to give shout outs to Greg Mack over at K-Day, because Greg Mack actually changed the sound of K-Day radio and allowed, you know, homegrown people like us to actually get our music on the radio.
I still love K-Day. And in fact, whenever, you know, when I drive my car around LA, I always listen to K-Day, because it's like the essence to me of what radio is supposed to be. You know, it really reflects this really, really rich sound and lots of 80s, 90s, old school hip hop.
Yeah.
So you got a little bit of a taste of going to the recording studio, and then where did NWA and Dre and all of that, how did NWA come about?
Yeah, so we were all touring together during this early 80s thing, like 84, 85. We were all touring together doing this up-tempo dance music, which we eventually coined electro funk. That's what we kind of called it on the West Coast. And it was always Egyptian Lover, the Wrecking Crew, me, the LA Dream Team. We were always together doing these shows across first the West Coast and then up through Texas and eventually across the country. And at that time, me and Dre used to hang out like real tight. Like when we were home, because we produced together, we did a lot of the same types of music. And we were talking one day just about, how we weren't making the money that we should be making. He had like a raggedy RX-7 with no back window because somebody broke out his back hatch window to steal his Alpine radio and his jacket. And he could have the money to get it fixed. But we got hit records on the radio. But we're young. We don't know about writers or publishing or, any types of business to take care of ourselves. We're just getting paid $500 here, $1,000 here in the studio to do music for other people. And even the groups we were in, like I was a solo artist, so I was doing my own music, but I was still under somebody else's label. And I didn't understand about the writers and all that stuff early on. And one day Dre met this guy named Eazy-E through another guy who owned a record store at the swap meet at the Rhodium. And Dre told me one day, he said, man, I met this dude named Eazy-E. He's kind of like the neighborhood pharmaceutical technician, he does little stuff in the neighborhoods. And he doesn't want to do what he's doing anymore, but he has money and he's willing to invest that money in us to do something new. So we talked to him one day and then we were like, yeah, let's do something. So me, him, Easy, DJ Yellow from the Wrecking Crew came along from Dre. Ice Cube lived down the street from Dre's aunt, and he ended up being part of the group. MC Ren lived down the street from Eazy-E. He was part of the group. We all sat down one day, and next thing you know, NWA was born.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Did you know at the time that this was something really, really special, or was it just like we're all trying different things all the time, and you didn't have any idea what you were actually putting together?
We were just trying to eat. It was like, we need to make money. And for us, it was kind of like, let's make money. And at the time, there was an elevation in gang violence. There was an elevation in stuff that was going on with the drug scene. There was a big elevation in what was going on with police and police brutality. Like, I'm, a 16-year-old kid. I got a nice car for a 16-year-old kid in Compton because I made records. And I was getting pulled over every day by the police. I had a pager. They thought I was a drug dealer. They would tear my car apart every day. They knew who I was. And they would just harass me. And we got tired of that. So we started rapping about that as opposed to parties because, because of the gang violence and stuff, most of the dances and parties were not happening anymore because it was too violent.
Right, right. So you really saw this as, like I can be a professional musician and I should get paid for this.
Yeah.
And you were figuring out the bones. I mean, did you, what was that like? I mean, did you actually get paid? Did you, you said you got paid 500 here and 1,000 here in the studio, but were you guys just DIY trying to figure this all out for yourself? Any guiding professionals?
No, like I said, the only money we made was when we did shows. Like we go tour a little bit, we make that money. So we figured, hey, more records, we make more money on the road. We weren't even really thinking about royalties because we didn't know at the time. And when we put NWA together, there was this record distribution and pressing plant in LA called Macola Records. And literally 90% of all music off the West Coast came out of there. They did even MC Hammer and Stacey Q and all this music. So we got our stuff pressed and we would literally go to Macola, pick up our vinyl, pick up our cassettes and divvy them up. Like, these are yours, these are yours, these are yours, whatever you sell, that's your money. And that's the deal we had. We had no contracts between us. We were all homies and we just said, hey, this is your share, go sell it to make money. And we were making money. But one thing happened, and that's where I started to realize the music business, like, it's not fair, is the fact that we started getting calls from Texas, from the East Coast, from other places for shows for NWA. Like, how the hell are people knowing about this when we're just selling them in LA? Well, Don McMillan, who owned Macola Records, was shipping them out the back door and selling them across the country. So, we kind of figured that out. And that's when we were trying to get out and get a real record deal.
Right, right. So did you find a manager, or did you do a record deal? What was the logical next step to try to control that?
Yeah, so Easy had met this guy named Jerry Heller at Macola one day. And Jerry had actually worked with a lot of big rock groups before, which I didn't know at the time, but he was supposed to be like this big manager. And we gave him a shot, and nobody told us anything bad about him. So we didn't know. So we was like, all right, come on, let's go. And what happened was, because we didn't have a contract between us, he came in and became the manager, the agent, the attorney, all of these things. Like, he brought in an attorney. Everything was through Jerry Heller. And it was cool because he was pushing forward and getting us deals and opening doors. But it was bad because all the money was going there and it wasn't coming out anymore. So we weren't getting that money that we used to share. And he would say, oh, well, we're building the company, we're doing this. And at the same time, I had produced a song called Supersonic by the girl group JJ Fad. And I had originally put that song out on Dream Team Records because he was one of my buddies, and it started to blow up. It sold like 1 million copies, but people get greedy, and my buddy over there wasn't paying me or us fast enough or royalties. So we took it back, and I'm like, well, we got our own record label called Ruthless Records now. I'm going to bring Supersonic to Ruthless Records and put it out here, and let my family, the Dre and the Cubes and NWA, all of us, share in this song. And that song is going to help propel NWA. So Supersonic is killing it. I bring it back. If you look at the original label, it says produced by Arabian Prince and whatever. But when I brought it to Ruthless Records, I put Dre and Yella's name on it because we're a family. We're a production team. So it's produced by us now. The money's coming in to Ruthless. But then the same thing happened. The money's not coming out. Like, wait a minute. Hey, hello, this is my record. Can I get paid? I kept saying it, kept yelling, kept screaming, can I get paid? And I wasn't getting paid. And eventually I got tired of it. And during this time, this is when we were working on Straight Outta Compton. And so Supersonic is blowing up. The money from Supersonic is funding Straight Outta Compton. I'm still complaining because I got car payments and I got an apartment. I was only in the group that lived by myself and had bills. Everybody else was still living at home. And I'm like, man, I need to, nobody's listening to me because they didn't feel the pain I was feeling. So I eventually got an attorney and went to Jerry about this and got my business straight. And we had just finished the album. We had just started touring off of Straight Outta Compton. And I looked at the books and all this money that was sitting there that nobody was getting. And I'm like, wow. So I had to sign a deal saying that I wouldn't talk about it much. I got paid, got my royalties, got my 20%, and I bounced. And nobody, I couldn't really tell everybody why. All I could say was like, go talk to Jerry. Like, I bought a brand new Porsche and came to a concert like maybe a week or two later, and everybody's like, where'd you get that from? I'm like, talk to Jerry. And then literally a week or two later, Ice Cube left.
Wow. So you had because you had the experience of how this little glimmer of what this should really work, how this should work, and that you should actually get paid. You were the only one who was able to see that something was awry.
Yeah, because I was the only one in the group that was a solo artist before. Everybody else was underneath a head person. I was my own head person. And even though I still didn't know much about writers or publishing, all I knew was a good friend of mine, Unknown DJ at the time. He was the one, I call him the enforcer, because we knew we were getting ripped off by Macola Records. But we knew that we were supposed to get a check every quarter. We didn't know how much we were supposed to get. So what we would do is we go to Don McMillan and say, hey man, every 3 months, you cut us a check. And every now and then he'd come up with some excuse, and Unknown DJ was crazy. And Don would only pay us. Like, we would get paid every quarter. And I got used to that. And when the NWA thing happened, we weren't getting money every quarter. So that's when I started getting suspicious of that. I know money comes in, you get paid. Money comes in, you get paid. So that's how I got the attorney involved.
Yeah. And did when you first raised this with the other band members, I mean, what was their reaction? Were they like, no, don't rock the boat, everything's fine, or did they have an understanding that maybe you were right, that they were entitled to something more than what they were getting?
I think initially, no, they didn't listen to me because, you know, when you're getting big and you're doing shows and people are talking about you and you kind of got this thing, they weren't listening. And when you don't have anything, when you come from the hood, when you come from nothing, and you got a couple G's in your pocket, maybe 5 grand in your pocket, you got a decent car, and, you know, Jerry's talking about buying houses for us. You just look at that and not really think about the business because you're getting something. But I knew that there was more because I had this hit record that I wasn't getting paid for. So it was a blessing to me because maybe if I didn't have Supersonic, I probably would have still been in the same boat with everybody else. Just give me whatever, I'll take what I can get. And yeah, I didn't rock the boat, but it opened everybody's eyes. And then, you know, like I said, Cube left, then Dre left because they realized that they weren't getting what they were supposed to be getting.
Yeah. And it's such incredible, you know, the timing of that was Straight Outta Compton being just one of these seminal albums that that all of that was happening at the same time. And from the outside, I'm sure everyone looks at that and says, oh, wow, these guys, you know, they're probably making a ton of money. And,
Yeah.
you know, and then, you know, it's what you don't see in this business, right?
Yeah. And something I mentioned to you yesterday is I can count. Like, that was one of the biggest records of all time back then. And if you even look at the RIAA now of the certification, it only said that it is certified like double or triple platinum after all those years until the movie came out. And then I think it certified another million. So Straight Outta Compton only sold 4 million copies, 5 million copies. Come on. There was a lot of stuff going out the back door back then, especially back when you couldn't really track it as you can now.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many lessons for this, for the current industry, because I think a lot of times, you know, artists might feel like something's not working or they're not getting paid what they should be getting paid, or their deal is really old and but they don't want to rock the boat. You know, they're like, well, you know, I don't want to be shelved. I would like more money, but what do you say to people now? I mean, do you have any advice for people that might be in that position in the current era?
Yeah, you got to realize that you're a brand. Like, you are the reason that people make money. And that's something I realized, that I was talented. I made money before NWA. I made money after NWA. So I'm the talent. Why is somebody else making more money than me? And, you know, people are scared to like, well, they got me my deal. They're the ones who handle all this stuff. Shut it down for a month and see how people act. Like, just don't do anything, because that means nobody's making money. And then you realize you're important. So that's what I say is first thing you do, this is called the music business. And most people forget about business. They take care of their music and forget about business. I can't tell you how many millions of songs are on Spotify or on, you know, SoundCloud that aren't copywritten. I could go right now on SoundCloud and go, hey, I like that. And just redo it and put it out, because they haven't taken care of their business. But, you know, I think really take care of your business first and then focus on your music.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, to be a musician now, you are an entrepreneur, probably always been an entrepreneur, but even more so now, because
Yes.
you have all the tools and everything available that you don't necessarily even have to have a label if you don't want.
Right. Right. And that's what like made me pivot, you know, because it was so hard to get paid in music back in the day that I, you know, was looking into technology because, you know, like I said, I was the kid that knew about the synthesizers and the sequencers and all of that. And you had to use computers to sync all that stuff up in the studio. So I was tinkering around with other stuff like, oh, I can do animation. Oh, I can do coding and make plugins for this and that. And that's what pivoted me into the tech space.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, because you're doing so much now in gaming and tech and connecting tech into education and youth culture. So, you know, talk a little bit about how that transition happened while you were making music and having an incredible amount of success, and then you looked at gaming and tech and went there.
Yeah. So when we were touring with NWA, I bought a laptop from Radio Shack back when Radio Shack sold computers. And there's only maybe 3 people on this call that's old enough to remember that. But, you know, it was called like a Tandy. Yep. It was a Tandy. I had a Tandy laptop And then I remember buying this other thing called, we called them a Trash 80, a TRS 80. I had a TRS 80. I had a Commodore VIC 20, you know, and all of these computers that I was dabbling with because I could use them to burn what was called an EEPROM. It was a chip that you would put in a drum machine to do the sounds. So I initially used that to put my sounds on and then burn them to samplers or burn them to compute to, you know, more technical stuff for drum machines. But at the same time, I was really into gaming. Gaming was very early on, and they were very simple games. And I started to figure out how they made the games. And I started teaching myself coding and doing sprite animations and little things. And I had my own internet channel before the internet. Like there was something called BBSs back in the day, bulletin board systems. And there was no internet, right? You had to literally dial in. Like you had your modem, you put your phone on the thing and you would dial into my thing. And it was called the Game Syndicate. And I had little stupid sprite games like a card game or some little pixel game, and you could play it. And people would come to my bulletin board and play games. So I was so into tech, and I started to find out I would go to conventions, I would go to Comdex, I would go to SIGGRAPH, I would go to CES. I've been going to CES since the first CES. And it's kind of like I learned that, hey, there's a lot more money over there than over here. And I started messing with animation, going to SIGGRAPH and talking to some of the big animation companies that did the software. Like at the time, it was NewTek with Lightwave, it was 3D Studio Max, and by Kinetics. And I would talk to them and ask them questions about their software because I was using it. And they saw I was pretty good at it. And they were like, why are you so good at this? I'm like, well, I got a lot of time on my hands, and told them who I was. Next thing you know, I'm a poster child for these animation companies. They invited me to work on some projects. I did all the visual effects on the first series of the Power Rangers, worked on Addams Family, Casper, Silver Surfer, Independence Day, a lot of movies and TV shows. And then from that, moved over into video games. And I was doing all of this in parallel to doing music.
That's incredible. And you told me a story last night when we were chatting that about how you were doing animation and you had all this equipment in your apartment.
Yeah.
At the time doing rendering. Tell
Oh yeah. So I was doing stuff for Saban at the time. And I was like the poster child for this company called Intergraph Computer System. They made these huge, huge, huge computers. Matter of fact, I think I have did I put the picture in here? I did. Check this picture out. There we go. That was me in like probably the late 80s, maybe early 90s in one of my little offices. And I had render farms, and I would sit in there and render animation for big companies. And they were paying me like crazy money. I was making like $2,500 a week just to render animation that was going to be going on television. And they paid me so much because it had to be done. You know, like we need it now because we got to go live with this. So yeah, I had a whole nother career.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so let's talk about some of the things that you're working on now, because I know you've got a long-standing partnership with Microsoft.
Yeah.
You've got your SpongeBob there lurking in the background.
I like SpongeBob. Yeah.
But tell everybody a little bit of what's in your world right now.
Man, I own a streaming PC company called GOAT with 3 G's. GOAT stands for greatest gadget gear of all time, or greatest gaming gear of all time, greatest gig gang of all time, whatever you want to call it. It's just GOAT. It's the greatest. And I built this company because streamers and DJs and gamers, especially because of the pandemic, a lot of people are streaming now. And I'm seeing the problem that people are having struggling streaming. So I wanted to build a system that was turnkey for people who wanted to stream. Like we're actually building something called a Holy Goat for churches. So churches can buy a turnkey system and stream. But all my DJ buddies, we saw them struggling, and me and another partner of mine called EVGA, who makes all of the graphics cards, said, hey, let's give away some systems to some DJs and see how better they do. So one of my buddies, Z-Trip, who's a big time DJ, we gave him a system. Little John has a system. We gave one to Jazzy Jeff. The Beat Junkies have some systems. So we're kind of seeding the market with these systems. And now on Twitch, they're like streaming at 1080p 60, and it's amazing. So I've sold so many systems in the past couple of months because people now are using computers as their livelihood. Before, DJs just had like a laptop, like I got a MacBook Pro, that's what they use. But you really can't stream on a MacBook. MacBooks aren't made for streaming. So you need a PC, preferably a gaming PC or something built like that to do all your streaming. So now GOAT is going to be that new company that's going to support the culture. And I don't call my company a tech company. We're a cultural brand. GOAT is for the community. So we have something called GOAT Nation, which is going to be this ecosystem that not only helps you, you know, purchase the equipment that you want, but we support you and show you how to use it. We get other people on board for if you need graphics, if you need overlays, if you need emotes, all of these things. We're going to have an ecosystem that you can come to our website and have people help you make money. That's kind of what we want to do.
Well, it's really portable. Isn't that?
Oh, yeah. So here's one right here. This is where the shameless plugs come in. So this is one of the GOAT systems. If you see that, that's a gaming system next to it. But this is a GOAT computer. And pretty much that's it. I mean, this is a full-blown, you know, streaming gaming system, whatever you have. And you can take this. I made it small because I figured once the pandemic is over, DJs are going to go back on the road again. But now the DJs have a taste of streaming where they're making actual money off of Twitch and off of, you know, Instagram and YouTube and Discord. They're going to want to continue to stream when they're doing their live shows. So I wanted to make a system small enough that they could, you know, carry around with them or throw in a Pelican case, take it on the road. When they're doing their live show, they can actually stream to their own followers and continue to make money.
Yeah, because I don't see this live streaming going away.
Oh, no, it's a new, I mean, the revenue that I'm seeing from some of these DJs, even smaller DJs who may only had worked once a month or had some little small club that they did that they made, you know, $300 to $500. They're making $300 to $500 a day. And these are smaller DJs because they have their fan base and they're talking to their audience, just like we're talking now. You got to chat. But in the Twitch chat, people are tipping you money and giving you biddies and bits and, you know, and subscribing to your channel. So it's a lucrative business now.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's also like, you know, even if you went on a 50 city tour, you're still not going to reach the vast majority of your fans because they're dispersed all around the world. And so I see this as just being integrated into, you know, into our lives and our world for the foreseeable future. But it has been really surprising that there really weren't very many tools for it.
No,
it's been around for a few years, but you're filling a gap.
Yeah, we're filling a gap. And one of the things for me, since I'm, you know, born and raised in Compton, I'm this, you know, kid who didn't have anything. I'm really with GOAT Nation trying to go back into the inner cities and get these young kids to understand that technology is cool and technology is hip. And tech is everything, because people forget this. They think, oh, tech, they hear computers, phones, tablets, you know, things like that, coding. No, tech is fashion. Tech is sports. Tech is, you know, bottled water is technology. Everything is tech. And all you got to do is show kids that you can do anything you want to do, whatever you're into in technology. And that's what GOAT Nation is going to be about. We're going to do a weekly stream coming up. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go get inner city kids to be my news crew and my unboxing crew. So when a new product comes out, like the new Samsung S21 is coming out, I want to send it to a kid in the inner city and go, here's your phone. You get to keep it, but I need you to do a review for me. And they'll film their own review, send it to me. We'll go live on Twitch and have them review the product or a turntable or whatever. I want to get these big tech companies to start supporting the inner cities and doing that. And then that in turn will get kids to get into tech and want to work for these big companies.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important because, you know, like, you know, there's a reason why we don't have more diversity in all of these tech companies. And it's because women and, you know, inner city kids are just not, you know, they're not trained from an early age that it's something that's viable for them,
Right.
you know, and you need to do more than just say, well, you know, everyone can do anything they want, you know, kind of need to do more to pull them into this world.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I just partnered with a company called Solar Impact here in LA. And after all is over, I'm gonna talk to you guys about that because I want to do that in Nashville. I want to do it in Detroit and some other places as well. We're building a huge technology center in South LA. It's going to have 50 to 70 seats for esports. It's going to have a recording studio. It's going to have a film television area. Oprah Winfrey just kicked in some money. Dre and Jimmy just kicked in some money for this. So we're building it out now. It should be open hopefully in June, barring COVID stuff. But you know, even if it's COVID, we'll still do it in a safe way. But we're building that out right now. I got a bunch of big partners like Microsoft and Intel and Chipotle. They're all getting involved. And once we build this, I want to turnkey that and take it across the country and do it in inner cities across the country.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome because it's like the same thing with local music scenes. You know, musicians want to be around other musicians, and when you talk about what was happening in Compton, it's just kind of jaw-dropping to imagine all of you guys were living in the same neighborhood, and
Yeah.
that's part of what happened. But tech is the same, and you know, people need places to gather, and you want to be around other people that have that common interest, so you need to have a community center that's focused on it.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm gonna be honest. Technology is easy. People always tell people things are hard, but if you just explain it to somebody in an easy way, they'll get it. You know, like I'm 55 years old, and every single day, if I spin this computer around, you think I'm crazy. I'm like this Willy Wonka mad scientist cat. I do 3D printing. I do laser etching. I actually said, oh, I have a brand now. I need to sell T-shirts and apparel. How do you do that? I went on YouTube, figured out how to do it. I have my own pressing machines now. I'm making everything myself because I know I can't scale it, but I like to learn it first. And then I feel like I realize, okay, if I can figure this out on my own,
Right.
I'll make it. And then I'll go into the inner cities and teach the kids how to do it and have them work for me and, you know, own a small part of my company.
Well, that goes way back to what happened in those formative years with NWA when you said, I did a solo out, you know, I did some solo work, and I know that we're supposed to be getting paid. You know,
Yeah.
you figured it out for yourself first, and then you can take that on to the next, you know, to the next group.
Yeah.
So we have a couple questions. One which I think is really important, which is Arabian Prince. How
Oh, I
did
see
you?
that. Why that name?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and all the people here, you're gonna get a treat that you've never seen before. So this is all your fault for me showing people this. But anyway, back when I was young, I used to call myself DJ Prince because I thought I was Prince. I literally love Prince music and everything, and I used to dress like Prince, act like Prince, all of that stuff. And a buddy of mine, Egyptian Lover, we used to hang out together and we were DJing a lot together. Some girl walked up to me. I don't know who she is, never saw her again after that. And she asked Egyptian Lover his name. She goes, "What's your name?" And he goes, "Egyptian Lover." And she goes, "What's your name?" And I'm like, "DJ Prince." And she said, "You know what? You should call yourself Arabian Prince because you hang out with him, Egyptian Lover, Arabian Prince." And I just adopted that name because we did so many things together. And I'm gonna show something here. And if this pops up on Google or Yahoo or something like that, I'm gonna find out who posted this on the internet and I'm gonna find you. That's what I used to look like when I was young.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was me during the Purple Rain era. But see, I made money because I was the DJ that all the girls wanted to come and see, right? I was like DJ Prince and then eventually Arabian Prince. And yeah, and all you old people in the chat, I'm gonna say something to you. If you were my age or back then, you either dressed like Prince, Michael Jackson, you were ska, you were wearing the buttons with the checkered stuff and the suspenders. Everybody had a look. You look like, yeah, you know what I mean? Everybody had that look back then.
I had the black and white checkered shoes.
See? Yeah, everybody did something back then, so don't laugh at me.
So you were really inspired by Prince. Did you ever meet or collaborate with him?
I got to meet him when I was a young kid. When he had the afro, he actually came to the radio station when my father was doing talk radio. My father didn't interview him, but he was at the station, and I met him as a young kid when he was first really coming up. But that was before I was into Prince, though. I didn't know who he was yet then. And after that, my uncle was, oh yeah, you met Prince, and this is all of his stuff. And I think that's why a lot of people don't know me, because I kind of modeled my whole career around him, like mysterious. Like, I'm also known as Professor X. I got hit songs under Professor X that nobody knows it's me. And I wanted to be more mysterious than out in the public. So, you know, I care less about being in the public. I'm more of a creator and artist. I want to create and innovate. And that's what I've always been.
Yeah. Well, and somebody else is asking, I know you golf now because of COVID, but you're also basketball. You're really into basketball. So
Oh yeah.
someone's
Yeah.
asking about
You know
that.
what? It's so sad. I used to play in 3 basketball leagues and play basketball 5 days a week. I was really good. Like, they call me like the old ass Steph Curry. They're like, I get on the court, they're like, don't let him shoot, you know. But I haven't played basketball since February because I'm literally just trying to stick with the protocols and not get sick and do that. So I go play golf from time to time now. But yeah, as soon as I can get back on the court, I'm waiting.
Yeah. So what do you think, like one of the things that's really happening right now, in addition to live streaming, is music in gaming, you know, that we're seeing more and more convergence in these two worlds, which I'm thrilled about, because I feel like, you know, gaming is, a lot of people don't know that gaming is bigger than music and film industries combined.
Yes.
But what are your thoughts about that? And, you know, we've seen Travis Scott and, you know, Billie Eilish do these amazing, you know, Billie wasn't in a game, but hers was very much, you know, this, you know, immersive experience.
Yeah.
But what do you think about all that? Where
I
that
think that's the future, because like I said, if we can't go back and tour for a while, there's going to be a lot more interactive, you know, things going on with music. And I'm pushing all of the musicians out there that I know and saying, hey, you're just doing music and trying to sell music. You don't make money the way you used to by putting out an album, but licensing is the key. I'll give you a good example. Supersonic. It cost me $400 to do 2 songs, Supersonic, and we did something called Another Hope Bites the Dust. It was A and B. Actually, Supersonic was a B-side, but it blew up, so we made it a single. $400 it cost me to make that song. That song was Fergalicious, which made millions of dollars. That song was the 3rd verse of Rap God by Eminem, which went platinum. That song was the title track for Sonic the Hedgehog movie. You know what I mean? It makes money forever. Licensing is the way to go. If you talk to my buddy, Sir Mix-a-Lot, oh my God, Baby Got Back. Everybody, you know, he makes so much money off that record, but one of his biggest records is a record that he didn't even like, really. He did a song called Swass, right? It's not even a hit. That song was the Don't Ya song by the Pussycat Dolls.
Oh, wow.
And that made him millions of dollars. So I tell people, your throwaway music is a hidden gem that could make you millions in licensing, because some director of a movie, TV show, film, whatever, or commercial will take that and go, hey, we'll use that. We made hundreds of thousands of dollars off a Nissan commercial for Supersonic. I mean, it's just, licensing is the way to go now.
Well, it is, and a lot of times when people are putting together film or commercials or games, you know, sometimes they don't actually want the song that's been on the radio and that everybody knows. They want something that's just sounds like that, but it's just a little bit less. You know, it sounds more unique to that production.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think it's also, I can't, of course, ever leave a conversation about licensing without reminding everyone that if you're an artist, you know, listen to these lessons of what Arabian did, and understanding that if you don't have, you know, and if you don't have your rights figured out and you don't know how it is that you're going to collect on those future licenses, you'll never get paid.
Yeah.
But it is phenomenal how music is kept alive decades after it's been released through games and film and video.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting to the end of our time. Do you, I guess the only last thing I'd love to ask you is just, kind of what's next? Like, tell us a little bit more about when GOAT is going to be, what you've got a lot of people coming to you for these kits, and tell us about what you're excited about in the future. It's coming up.
Yeah. So, quietly, like somebody says, you're just doing it. Said, no, we're going after Apple. Like, I want Apple. Because I look at it this way. If you think about Apple, when they started making their systems back in the day, they were the startup company to make these cute little Mac 2C computers and all these little things. And IBM and all the big companies were like, they're just nobody. I want that to be me, is where I'm focusing on the new generation of people that need to do things, from streaming to entertainment to all of these kind of things, and gamers as well, and build systems for us, by us, not Dell buys Alienware and goes, oh, we got this gaming computer. And if you open up an Alienware computer, it looks cool on the outside, but inside it's the same parts that's in the other Dell that they charge you $500 less for. We want to make quality product that help you make money. And every gamer now is a brand, and they're out there making money. They're not just playing games anymore. They're streaming, they're doing things, they're, talking about products, and you want to use systems that are going to help you make money. And that's kind of what we're doing.
That's good. And it has to be one of very few, if any other, Black owned PC company, right?
It's just me right now. Go tell the world. No, just kidding.
Excellent. But that's a huge milestone, right? Yeah. I mean, it really is. And I think the approach you're taking with, like figuring out what people's needs are, and then, bringing it to kids and the next generation, that's really inspiring.
Yeah. And we want to change the world, because like what we're doing too is, we haven't come up with the exact number. I think it's after every 10 computers or 50, we got to look at the numbers, but every set of computers that we sell, we build one and give to an inner city kid. We give to an organization. Like, we just gave 50 computers to the Boys and Girls Club. We're doing the same with SOLA. We're bringing in that. So for everything we sell, we're putting them back into the inner city. And I'm teaching the kids how to build these computers, because if, some of these kids are not going to go to college. They don't even have aspirations to go to college. Well, I don't care, because I'll teach you how to do what I do and clone myself 50, 75 times and let them take over and run the world. So
that's awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who joined this chat, and Tom, most of all, for organizing. This has been a blast, and I feel like we could go on. For hours, but I respect everybody's time.
And I want to say Tom is amazing, and I've heard amazing things about Tom, and I so appreciate the opportunity to just talk and, do amazing things.
Great.
Well, let me jump in here and say my thank you. First off, Vickie, you've proven again you were the smartest person in the room by bringing the incredibly smart Arabian prince to the room. Oh my God, this has been unbelievable. I can't, the comments and the texts that I'm receiving offline are high-fiving me, but I'm high-fiving you guys. So thank you. Arabian, how can our audience support your efforts? Is there a website they can go to? Can you put it in the chat? Or
yeah, I'll put a
whatever?
couple things in the chat. And it's funny, like for me, I've never asked for support. We just do. I get all my partners help, but if people just want to just reach out and say hi or what have you, I got a couple companies, and we'll make sure I'm putting them in right. Innovate Next.
Well, in all seriousness, when you mentioned taking your initiative across the country, I would love to help you in Nashville.
Yeah, well, let's do it. Like, I think that this is important to do it. And what I'm finding is you get a lot of big corporate companies and big companies that are doing these initiatives, and it's not for the right reasons. They're like big, big esport arenas, but you don't see the right people in the arenas. Right. If that makes sense. I want to get these inner city kids to understand that they're just as important as anybody else, and they can do these things. But unless you put the tools in their neighborhoods, in the places where they are, they're not going to go to the other places to be. Like, Austin has a huge esport arena, huge, but the kids in the inner cities can't go to Austin to see it. or be a part of that. So, and also last thing I want to say is I want kids to know that playing the game is one thing, but what gaming companies do is gaming companies hire from within. So to the parents out there who have kids that, and I say this in a nice way, not a mean way, you know who your loser kid is. You call him a loser yourself. Like, he's not going to be worth anything. All he does is sit there and play games. Well, guess what? They need him. Go get him a job at a gaming company as a game tester. Because all my friends who used to be game testers 10 years ago, they're all producers of games like Call of Duty and making millions of dollars. So they hire from within. If that's his interest, there's over 100 jobs in gaming right now that nobody knows about.
That's great. Well, in the chat, we've already got a steering committee in Nashville established to bring Triple G GOAT to Nashville.
Let's do it.
Yeah, well, we're in. I promise you. Thank you again to everybody. Thank you for Tennessee Brew Works for having me in today.
Hey, Tennessee Brew Works. Y'all need to send some of that down to LA.
I think I know some people that might be able to make that happen. Hey, folks, thanks again. Keep tuning in. We will be back here next Tuesday with Parthenon Huxley and Dan Levitin. And just wait till you see who's coming up after that one. So the hits are going to keep coming. I'm so excited for 2021. It's a new year, a new administration, a new world. Be nice to each other, wear your mask, and stay healthy.
Salute.
See you later.
Bye.